Hello, Truth Seeker here, and it's been a little while since I last made a video. Um, it's been kind of crazy for me the last couple of weeks, and I just thought maybe I'd get on and explain a little about what's going on, because some of it is indeed relevant to um, people like us who have grown up with, let's see, extreme indoctrination and religion. I know that there are those that who've rejected their faith and continue to keep a, a belief in a deity, in God, or in some sort of universal force that is kind of guiding or controlling the events of the universe. I kind of had gone through that myself initially. It's very difficult when you're born and raised and so strongly indoctrinated in a belief in God and a belief in the Bible as the Word of God, and especially when that belief in the Word of God as holding some unseen truth, a truth that can only be ciphered through the power of God's Holy Spirit. That it's the key to unlocking the door of truth in the as it's presented in the Bible. It's very difficult to expunge those ideas out of your mind when you're so heavily raised with this idea that the Bible is some version of the Da Vinci Code, that there are these hidden meanings that can only be revealed to you by God's power. And when you begin to question the premises that form the basis of your faith, it's still difficult. I mean, especially when family is tied into it, you feel like you've betrayed your family heritage. And I know I went through all of that, and I experienced the difficulty of reconciling my realization that what I had been raised to believe was not true, and yet not holding on to some semblance of faith in a God and in some universal power that is guiding and controlling things in our lives. We want that. I mean, I think it comes back to our innate sense of needing to be cared for and cherished, like a child. Many of our feelings really go back to really our childhood, and that's kind of strange to think that when you reach, the age that I've reached, I'm not terribly old, but when I stop and think that I'm the oldest person in the group that I work in, I'm in my middle 60s or approaching my middle 60s pretty soon. Um, I'm not going to be planning a second career, 30 years out. I've pretty well. I mean, that's just life. I mean, you can't do anything about that. Maybe someday medicine will make it so that instead of 60, 80 years, a person will expect to live 120 years or maybe 150 years. Life expectancies have been going up. But what I'm getting at is that it's really interesting and distressing that the insecurities that had been, for lack of better words, pummeled into you as a child, indoctrination as a child about who you are in the scheme of things, in the realm of God's universe, and that you're nothing, that you're sinful, that you're born in sin, that you need God's forgiveness, that there's a path of behavior that you have to obey, the culture that is defined by your religion, which you have nothing to say about because you're born into it. Your parents bring you into this world. They say that you can't choose your parents. And whatever religion your parents are, you're going to be born into that, and they're going to raise you in what they themselves had been raised in, and it perpetuates until somebody stops and says, "Hey, wait." But when you're raised in a cult, you're raised with these insecurities. You're raised to think that you're sinful. You're raised to think that what is actually a natural thing, and natural behavior is abhorrent, and abhorrent to the all-knowing, all-seeing God. He never sleeps. He always sees, and he sees you in particular, and he is going to punish you for your sins if you don't behave right. And it screws with you. And it can take a long, long time for you to work through these issues of self-esteem, of valuing yourself as a person, and how hard it is when you work. How hard that work is to work through these things. I've been in therapy for many years, and then when something happens, how quickly it all just falls apart, and there go the alarms, and your head and your insecurities come flying right back, and they consume you, and they just take over, and you have no control over it. So I'm going to tell you a little about what's been going on, and with the idea that people like us, people who have been raised in an extreme religion, extreme cult, extreme, it was absolutely abnormal, the way Jehovah's Witnesses children are raised, the way Bible student children are raised, with the religion being all important and your well-being second place at best. Your parents, when they made their consecration, their consecration was fully to devote their lives completely to God, and part of that devotion and part of their obligation was to make you a servant of God too. And they want that on certain levels, emotional levels. Not only are they concerned about, let's say, your salvation, but also whether or not they're meeting their obligation in their salvation by raising you in the truth and making you appreciate the truth the way they appreciate the truth. So these are the problems, and there's my lovely wife behind me taking our kitty cat out for a walk. But instead of watching me for a while, I'm gonna talk, and I'm going to give you the treat of looking at something a lot prettier than me for certain as I speak, because I think you all deserve that. And I actually took an aerial video this morning that I thought was quite unique. And so while I talk, I'm going to be taking, let's say, the 30,000 foot view for you. Okay, so anyway, here we go, up and away. So, as we enjoy this lovely scenic drop, I'll be telling you about some of the issues, some of the problems that have been happening with me in my life that have me worried. It's a shame that we have to go through the things that we go through after having worked so long and so hard in our lives against multiple forces. I think it's even tougher, far tougher for us who have grown up in a cult to make it through life. We have more than just life's challenges to deal with, and life's challenges are more than enough for an awful lot of people. But I've been working now since I was a teenager. I guess it's coming close to 50 years that I've actually worked, and I began working, and I started a career in environmental protection. I went to college, and I majored in physics. I found out, when I actually, my wife was the one who inspired me to go to college. Her family were all academic overachievers, Princeton graduates, doctorates from Princeton University, from Smith College, some of the best colleges, universities in not only in the United States but in the world. They graduated from these. My one brother-in-law is an astrophysicist who was world renowned. He's retired now. My brother-in-law was one of the premier infectious disease researchers in the private sector in the world. He's retired now. But they all had this very strong influence on me. My wife was in college when I met her, and I was just an auto mechanic, just making my way through life, drifting. I didn't even choose mechanics. I kind of accidentally fell into it when I was a teenager. But I was hungry. Once I saw what a college education could yield, and I just was hungry for information, for knowledge. I just loved to learn about things. I loved learning. And so my wife, she made it possible for me to go to college. Of course, we were working and living at the dawn. She had to really make a very strong sacrifice with her life, because not only did she raise our two daughters while I was in college, but she also put a roof over our heads. She worked pretty much all the time for the dawn. It was a no quit job. She worked till 10, 11 o'clock at night often, and even on vacation she couldn't just take vacation. She had to prepare the dawn family meals. There were about 25 at dinner, 35 at lunch, and she had to prepare these weeks in advance just to take a week's vacation for camping. So she really worked hard and sacrificed to put me through college, and I learned that I was good at mathematics, and I kind of followed that course. I liked not only mathematics, but I liked how to understand how things worked. So I majored in physics, and it was a good combination of mathematics. I had was a math minor, and I also learned about a variety of natural phenomena, how electrical forces work, and mechanics, and all the different aspects of physics, wave motion and projectile motion, and all. It's really cool stuff. All that is so fascinating. And this world is just an amazing world. And I would have loved to have gone on to a graduate education in physics, a PhD, but we had two young daughters, and my education wasn't just for me. It was really with the intent of supporting my family. So I had to start thinking practically when I graduated. And I graduated well. I didn't graduate from high school very well. I have to acknowledge that. I had no direction. I was discouraged from going to college. But when I did go, my parents didn't set aside money for me or my brothers, younger brothers, to go to school. We were supposed to be in the kingdom before we grew up. God was going to take care of everything, and we would have all those opportunities in the kingdom. So I had to find something that could support our family, and so I did a little research. And at the time, in the late 1980s, the environmental field was a burgeoning field, and so I decided to enter grad school for environmental engineering. And again, I went at night. I got a job with AT&T Bell Laboratories, and I started off my career there. Well, that led to other opportunities, and I ended up working in a global foreign-owned company that is one of the largest companies in the world, one of the most profitable companies in the world. And I had worked my way up into the corporate environmental health and safety organization of this global company. Our group was an extension of the corporate headquarters, Environmental Health and Safety Protection Group, but we were based in the U.S. and because the perception at the time when our group was formed was that the laws and regulations were so onerous in the United States that they needed a special group who understood these laws and regulations on the environmental side, based in the U.S., and to address the regulatory requirements for all of the company sites, affiliates in the United States and Canada. And that's because 40% of the company's market share was based in the U.S. Well, our group remained pretty much separate in its scope of work until about 3 years ago, when we began integrating a little bit with the group in our corporate headquarters in Europe. And I began not only overseeing work and projects, environmental work and projects in the United States, but also began writing policies and standards and guidance documents for the company on a global scale, including company policy on environmental matters. And this it was working out well, but nobody anticipated that at some point in time anything major would change until about 2 weeks ago. The global head of environmental health and safety came. He usually comes to our group about once a year and visits us to update us on the latest things that he sees in our mission as a group. Well, this year he came with a surprise. Basically, he told us he was going to dismantle our group and our group's organizational structure. He indicated that no jobs would be lost, but we don't know what they mean by job. Job and position are not the same, one and the same. Having a box on an org chart and who fills that box are not necessarily the same thing. The other strange, there were some very strange and odd things in this surprise announcement that didn't make a whole lot of sense, but were quite disturbing. He talked about the Peters Principle, which was a 1960s legacy business principle that people rise to their level of incompetence. I don't know what that had to do with anything. He wasn't explicit about how that had anything to do with what we were talking about. But he also mentioned some other things about not necessarily looking for the best individuals, the most qualified individuals to fill a position, but those that are more willing to cooperate. So he was more interested in hierarchical, let's say authoritative, let's say respect, as opposed to whether or not one was more qualified for the position. And in a sense, that's like an extortion. That's like, okay, if you don't want to cooperate, we don't care about how qualified you might be. You may be the best in the world, but that doesn't matter to us because we're going to do what we're going to do. And if you don't like it, tough luck. I mean, that's about the only way I think something like that can be interpreted. He gave an example of an individual that they were going to hire based in London, but he was unwilling to move to headquarters. He wanted to telecommute, which is quite feasible in this day and age. And there was another candidate who agreed to move to the headquarters, although he was quite a bit less qualified. Well, they chose the less qualified person because he was willing to move. So that was a distressing statement. So as we come into my home for a landing, I guess we'll have to suffer through my face again to finish this story about what I'm ready to tell. So, back again. We're back. We got our feet back on the ground. And so you could imagine that there wasn't a whole lot of, let's say, discussion on the part of our members, our group. We were just listening. It was a 2-hour kind of presentation that we were sitting through, and we were all more or less stunned. We were told that the group is going to move. It's going to move to California. There were 2 sites identified, one in the Bay Area and another in Southern California near San Diego. And we those are the 2 choices that we were given for the location of the group, and that there was going to be a restructuring in such that we would not have any more local management, but that all of us would be reporting into a manager or director, whatever the title they give them, directly in headquarters in Europe. So all of our organizational structure and our supervisory structure is going to be dismantled completely, and we all will be aligned somehow to somebody in Europe, based in Europe. And that was it. We were not given any other structure, any other information. It was like he came, threw the grenade into the room, and then shut the door. And to say the least, it's left the group. We're not a big group. There are about 16 of us all together. We're scattered in various places across the country. We do use telecommuting as a means of working as a unit. We don't necessarily believe that a group has to be in one physical location. That was apparently part of the problem. He wants us all to be in one location. He believes that it's inefficient to be located and scattered in different spots. But the irony of the thing is that moving us to California, I'm already located on the East Coast, if you couldn't tell by the scenery that you saw around me, but on the East Coast of the U.S., Northeast, and there's a 6-hour time difference, which is already significant enough between here and Europe, but to make it a 9-hour time difference where we will be reporting directly into our supervisors based in Europe is something that seems to run contrary to the whole reason for putting our group together in the first place, because we're going to be even further apart. I mean, if they did not elect to hire the best candidate because he was based in London and was unwilling to move to headquarters, then how is that consistent and makes sense with moving our entire group to California, even further away from headquarters than we could possibly be on the North American continent? So there are a number of things that are inconsistent. The argumentation used to justify the restructuring is inconsistent. Now, to tell the truth, this raises all kinds of concerns for everybody involved. We don't have a very large group. Most of us are based on the East Coast in the same location. The majority of us are, at least the professionals, that is, and we have been established. I mean, I may be the oldest individual in our group, but none of our group are what you would call, early. We don't have very many young individuals in our organization. I think our youngest people are probably in their mid to late 40s, Most of them are in their 50s. They still have 10 to 15 years to work. And then there are a couple of us that are roughly my age. I am the oldest one. But it's certainly created a tremendous disruption in our ability to function. I mean, something like that causes people to be so concerned that they are no longer effective in functioning, and despite the fact that they're professionals and we're all professionals, we're also human beings, and we have emotions. And to tell you the truth, we're not that far distant from the hunter-gatherers we were 100,000 years ago to roughly 10,000 years ago. We were largely hunter-gatherers, walking the savannas of Africa, North America, and we had, we weren't the top of the food chain. We had to be careful of the predators that were lurking in the savannas, and our fight and flight response is no different. It hasn't evolved beyond to adjust to the rapid and vast changes in our life. So these things that affect us and affect our livelihood and affect us in the same way as it would be as if it was a herd of mastodons charging us and we were backed up against a river or a rock cliff, or we found ourselves surrounded by a pride of lions. So the emotional fight and flight response emotionally is no different. We have not evolved beyond that, and so we're all experiencing that. But it's even worse for those of us that have grown up in a cult. I think there are either two ways a person could go in a situation like this. I think it disrupts us even more because all of the feelings of insecurity, of being different and being weird, and told that you were evil, that you were born in sin, that you were no good unless you had God's forgiveness, and and that you were separate from the world, you were peculiar from the world, your culture was peculiar. So all of those insecurities come welling back up again, even more so than the individuals who are fearing for their livelihoods. So it's a compounded problem for people like us, and this is where I've been really struggling. And I've been talking with my counselor. He's been quite supportive and empathetic. It's something we need. I never received the let's say coddling, the soothing, the feeling of being loved and wanted as a child. And suddenly here I feel like I'm thrust back into this dog eat dog world that there's no order now. It's like a game of musical chairs, and there are only so many chairs, and either you give up or you fight. And we were taught not to fight. We were taught to sacrifice. We were taught to as Christians, let the lions come, be a martyr, don't fight. It's against God's rules and law. And as a Christian, you were to make those sacrifices because God was going to set everything right in the end, you see. But that's not real life. And in order to do what's best for me and my family, I have to take my interests as a major consideration. It runs extremely counter to my personality, especially with the way I was taught to be. And so it really puts me at a disadvantage in these circumstances like this. And I wish this doesn't happen to anybody, but it does. This is the way the world operates, and it's not altruistic. It's dog eat dog out there. It really is. But I'm trying to make do. It's certainly taking its toll on me emotionally. People always say, well, they'll offer you a pass. There's been no mention of any kind of compensation. There, for, I expect that they're going to expect me to make a move because this is the way they want it done. And I still have more years to work before I'm able to retire. I mean, it's a different world now than it used to be. I am lucky to have a pension, but I still have to work before I'm able to afford to not work. And Social Security, like it is for so many of us, is a very important part of my my retirement plan. So it's critical for me to make certain time, and I couldn't, after working for 50 years or close to 50 years, to see it, jeopardized like this is scary, to be quite frank. So, and I'm not doing this or saying this to try and glean people's sympathy, although it's nice to have people show that they actually indeed care. I mean, we are a social species, and we that's how we've survived. I mean, by showing empathy and care and such. But that's not why I'm doing this. I've been tremendously preoccupied with this whole matter, as you might think. Families are not the same as they used to be. It used to be that you sent your child to college at 18 and they graduated and they went off and they made their livelihood at 22 with a college education. It's not like that anymore. Jobs are sparse. Good jobs are hard to come by, and people are finding that they have to take care of their children much longer than they used to, from a financial point of view, just so that they can survive. I'm not going to leave my kids high and dry, and that's been part of the matter, is the taking care of my family has also made it so that my ability to, let's say, retire early on, take an earlier retirement, is not possible. So, and I'm not going to just leave them, although my responsibility technically should not be there. I just can't do it. I mean, I don't want to see them hurt. I don't want to see them in pain. I had a hard fight in my life, and I wanted to make their life better than what my life was. I really had to fight for what I had, and it's hard. It's really hard. It goes against everything. You either get consumed by life or you rise above it somehow. and it's been a struggle, and it's even more a struggle for those of us raised in cults, and that's the bottom line, and that's the reality of it. We're not alone. We're together in this thing, and that's the truth, and it's a truth that most people don't or will never understand. That people raised in cults are have more to overcome and to deal with on an emotional and psychological point of view than others that have had supportive families all along, that didn't that placed the children uh, more as the primary part of their life, and not secondary as my brothers and I were to our parents. That's why I had a brother that committed suicide. He just didn't have the energy to fight it any longer, and he couldn't survive. Um, so that's the thing, what I'm facing lately, and I had hoped, to at least get a little vacation. It's funny that in all the years that I've worked, that this has actually been one of the busiest years of my life in terms of work, and what work I've had to complete, and what was expected of me to be done, or to complete. And there was a lot of work that just came up just arose out of nowhere in the middle of the year, and I had to work like a madman to get the work done in August. August was awful for me, and I hadn't had any chance to take any kind of a vacation, and I'm really exhausted. So I decided that I was going to take a vacation in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, in the first week of October, because it's still summer like down there at this time of year. And guess what? Fate would have it that Hurricane Florence is right now hovering over the southeastern corner of North Carolina, which includes the Myrtle Beach area, and I don't know how that's going to affect. Are they going to be over? It's only 2 to 3 weeks away that I plan to take my vacation. So I'm hoping that they won't experience too much damage there, and that we'll have some chance to enjoy the Carolina coastline. But God, it just doesn't seem to stop. But it's that time of year for hurricanes, and so the odds were there that it would happen. But you get a direct hit right over the place that you booked for vacation 3 weeks ago is a little distressing. I try and find webcams to see what the current condition is, and it doesn't look so good. It looks awful windy and rainy there, so I just hope there isn't a whole lot of damage. Maybe we can still pull out a vacation. But anyway, that's the way things have been going. I during this time, if you've been following me, you notice that I've spent a lot of time on the Bible students, their history, their connection to the Jehovah's Witnesses, the split, and how the Bible students and the Jehovah's Witnesses differ in their beliefs, but how they're similar culturally, in many respects, and where they differ, I had put up a lot of photographs. My cousin so graciously digitized over 2,000 of my grandfather's slides, many of which I used in my presentation, and I still plan to use in my presentation. I've shared these photographs with a lot of my friends who I grew up with and who knew many of these individuals like I did. Um, and I knew that they'd appreciate them, even though a number of them are still connected with the Bible students. I I still knew that they would appreciate them because they're photographs of their beloved relatives, mothers, aunts, uncles, cousins, parents, close family. The Bible students were very, very, well, one way to put it is incestuous. Uh, it was a very family oriented religion. There's a lot of intermarriage within the Bible students, and so there's a lot of keen interest, especially in the older photographs of some of the original Bible students that their families today, 3 and 4 or 5 generations down the line, are still in the Bible students movement. And my grandfather's slides are really kind of unique in that there are very few, if anybody, took the number of slides he did at general conventions to preserve the spirit of the convention, of the people there, to capture some of the culture of the Bible students there. Some of the key individuals. My grandfather was one of the. He was tied in. Let's put it this way, from a let's say a hierarchical perspective, and he was one of the more respected and known Bible students over the last 75 years. He was Norman Woodworth's best friend, and my grandmother was Norman Woodworth's personal secretary for 25 years. So there was a close connection with Norman Woodworth, who was really the catalyst around which, the nucleus around which the movement recoalesced after the split with Watchtower and Rutherford. So that's it. I just wanted to kind of explain why I've been absent, and also to make some of these observations because you too may undergo. I mean, everybody undergoes these, life's experiences, and no matter how hard you work, you're never going to fully dispel the feelings that have been engendered within you as a child growing up in the Bible students. Oh yeah, but one more thing I wanted to add is that I've dropped off the Bible student movement. I mean, the Jehovah's Witnesses would call it fading. I did get a phone call, and I did when I stopped attending meetings. One of the Bible students we had been meeting with called me up and asked me why I wasn't around, and I told them, basically that I had my questions, and that I wasn't going to attend the meetings until I sort these questions out in my mind. And So I've never been really approached since, especially by family, which is really kind of odd because Bible students don't like seeing other Bible students disappear. They contact them, they work on them, they try to reinvigorate their interest if they lose interest. That hasn't happened with me, and I think that's because I was always the black sheep or the rebel, and it makes them feel good about themselves. Maybe I cause them to fear because they see the reason why I don't attend. I engender the deep dark fear of what if it's not true, and I think that that's probably why they leave me be. I would have thought that family would have taken more interest in bringing me back into the fold, but it seems to me that there's this de facto or pseudo uh, ostracizing or shunning. It's not exactly a shunning, but but they're certainly not reaching out to me, and they want. I think they're a little afraid to contact me um, because they basically have nothing to talk about. I mean, if it isn't about the Bible students, then what? There's nothing to talk about. Uh, just worldly stuff, and they're not about the world at all. You got to talk only about Bible student stuff. So, but I did when I sent the link and shared the drive, the Google Drive with the photographs to my family, because there are many family pictures in the slides that I know that they would appreciate, and and for those family members that seem to show interest, I sent the link and shared the link, um, and I haven't heard anything from anybody yet, except one person. One of my cousins contacted me, and I indicated he wanted to find out whether or not I was amenable to them using these slides for some kind of, I don't know, Bible student, I don't know, nostalgia thing, to put together a presentation of yesteryear, looking back. Bible students are real big on looking back at their heritage and their connection to Pastor Russell and so on. So he asked me whether or not he could use the slides for that purpose, and I was a little hesitant because I just didn't want carte blanche use of these slides. But at the same time, I didn't want. I mean, I do understand that there would be a lot of interest in these slides, especially to the generation of my generation and those that are a little older, because they knew all these people. They were the link. They were the connection. They were the ones. Many of the older ones in the slides that I have were the ones that had the direct connection and relationship to Charles Taze Russell, and even more so than any of the Jehovah's Witnesses today, because there were simply more Bible students that left. I mean, there were relatively maybe 3/4 of the Bible students associated with Watchtower during Russell's time left the Watchtower in the 20s and 30s. I made that point in the Who Are the Bible Students series I made. And so there's a stronger connection to the founder of Watchtower in the Bible students than there is in the Jehovah's Witnesses, especially with the tremendous growth. The to find somebody who is, 4 or 5 generations into the watchtower is very, very slim, because many are second, third generation converts, from the 60s, 70s. Some go back to the 50s, but they don't have the original connection to Watchtower that the Bible students have, and that heritage and that link. So there's that connection, and those slides that my grandfather had, really directly links, to Russell himself, in the sense that these were, many of the older ones in these slides were his associates, from the Bethel, and from the early Bible students' classes, that were scattered throughout the United States. So, uh, yeah, I can see why they would be interested in the slides. So, I'm a bit ambivalent about how they're used, but at the same time, I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't know. I think, in a way, though, the reason I feel this way about the slides is because I've been using them to in sort of an activist way, against the Bible students. But they have the same pictures, the same photos, and the same people used, in a nostalgic remember when, kind of way, is sort of an irony, and I'm not sure. I don't know. I just got a funny feeling about it. But I had an opportunity to tell my cousin that, I'm an atheist, and he is, one of the more prominent, Bible students today. He's considered the more intellectual of the Bible students. He gets really deep into the chronology of the Bible and this and that. Uh, and I don't know. I've given some thought about, maybe interacting with him, at least just to find out how he thinks on questions that that were my considerations, that caused me to doubt, my faith, and how he's able to reconcile, these questions. Whether or not he's, how does he question? How does he reconcile? Is he really that much in denial? Um, is he overlooking? Is he, selectively picking his? I remember him saying something in a talk once that, of the Bible scholars that are believers in the Bible. Well, today the majority of scholars, that have looked into the Old Testament writings and the New Testament writings, people like Bart Ehrman and others, many others, the vast majority of them, don't take the, biblical scriptures, as being valid or supported by archaeology. There are a few here and there, and those are the handful, that he is referring to, and that he builds his chronological base on. So, I think it's selective, quite selective, as opposed, well, he's got his entire life invested in pursuing the Bible students, and they all do. And then it could be a tremendously unnerving, thing to think that for 60 years they believed and acted on something that wasn't the truth. It can be a taunting, a really upsetting. And when I say upsetting, it's not just like, I mean, really overturning your whole sense of who you are. Um, it's a rare thing for people my age are, that to 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 willingly accept that what I had believed all my life was not true. I mean, it was, it's an investment that people make. They've invested their lives into this, and they think that maybe their lives were wasted. I like to think of it as I've got the rest of my life to live freely, to choose my course without, and to appreciate, to love life to its fullest, as opposed to I wasted my life. I think of it all as a learning curve. And yes, I've lost my religion. Yes, I've lost my faith. It's not wasted. It's made me appreciate what I do have now all the more. Even when circumstances arise that like I'm experiencing now with work, the trauma of not knowing what's going to happen in the next 3 months can eat away at you, and initially it did. But at this point, there isn't really anything I can do. I've done all that I've been able to do, and we have to let it go and take it from there and see where it all ends up. So anyway, that's been what's happening on my end, and I really hope that all of you have it much easier at this point. That you don't have to struggle with these types of things. Many people do, and it's unfortunate when your whole life. It really is a quality of life issue, and it to overturn and to jeopardize the ones that you love the most. I feel like the burden of my family is on my shoulders even now. Maybe that isn't true. Maybe there's some veracity to it. I don't know, but it's how I feel, and I don't want to. I just want to do the best I can for them, and this throws the monkey wrench into the whole shebang. So, but anyway, that's what's been going on, and I'm going to try and make more videos in the future. There are a number of things that I really want to talk about. I am an atheist. I don't have to apologize for that. I think there's good reason for that. I think that, if the Bible is the only basis for our understanding of a higher power and deity, then I think there's good reason to believe that there isn't this all-powerful entity, and I'm going to focus a little bit on that and why that's not a scary proposition, and look at it. Some of the things that I understand about the universe that I think are key, and how they've impacted my beliefs. What did I believe? What was I raised to believe? And how does science and the understanding of what cosmologists have discovered about the universe, how that affects the Bible and my understanding of the Bible, and how it kind of dismantled my belief in the Bible, and it includes evolution. I think that evolution is a key element to the whole thing. I mean, especially where it comes into the doctrine of the ransom. And so we'll get into some of this stuff in the future. I think it's interesting stuff to talk about. And but for the time being, I just wanted to kind of the lay down a little of what is happening in my life at this point to you guys. Some of you have shown real concern, sympathy, and kindness to me in your comments, and I do believe in the inherent goodness of humans. I just think it's something that is part of our nature. We're a social creature, and I think that humans are more good than not. So anyway, I do have a function I have to be at this afternoon, and so I better call it quits at this point. So thank you to everybody, and I hope to see you soon. I might even make one tomorrow. I don't know. It depends on how well prepared I am to address some of the stuff that I'd like to discuss, especially with regard to science, some scientific topics about the cosmology, about the universe in general, about what we know and how does it fit in Genesis. I've been watching a lot of this answers, things about this answers in Genesis. Certainly the 6 day, the literalists and the 24-hour day creation. That just doesn't make sense. But there are an awful lot of people who believe in it. But there are others that hold to the Genesis being more of a metaphorical sort of thing, and I don't think it was meant to be. So we'll discuss these types of things in some up and coming videos. I think there's some interesting matters, some interesting questions to address, and so anyway, this is Truth Seeker saying so long, and I wish the best to you all. Oh yeah. Before I just signed off, but before I hope you enjoyed that little aerial clip. I thought it was beautiful. It's not often you capture the atmospheric conditions so that you get that kind of low layer fog like that. That's the first time that I've been able to fly my drone in a when I can capture it, it makes it feel like you're way above the world. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that part a little bit. I really have had fun with it. I think it's kind of a fun little hobby if you do it just right. You're not impeding on people's rights. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that clip. So this is Truth Seeker saying so long to all of you.